For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a pitching / sort of tutorial video about how you're going to pitch your Telta County 6. So what I've got here essentially is the tent, and we're going to just go through step by step what you're going to do and the methods you kind of do it and the reasons behind it in ways as well. So what I will start by doing is to unravel tents. Now I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, basically purchasing a footprint. The reason I say that is purely because it gives you a clean base to start and put your tent directly on top of. It's important because obviously it helps you to position yourself on the pitch to make sure you're in the right location. But what it also does as well is it will also just protect the base of the tent from getting wet, muddy or sort of dirty at any point. So, but for the sake of the video, because I'm literally pitching this to take it straight back down again, I'm just going to kind of put it down without, I know I'm on a nice lovely bit of grass. We're dry. I'm not too worried about the rest of it as well. So we'll unravel the tent to start with. Position it where we want it to be. Now, what I'll do next is basically peg the main kind of four corners, the back two and the front two. And what we will do eventually actually is move to the front two where the ground sheet is sewn in. So, for pure clarification, I'm going to use my own pegs purely for this video, just to make sure it's all, save really but getting the actual pegs muddy. This is a basically first production sample, so it's not the official one tent that's going to be on there, but it gives you a bit of an idea about it. We have done a separate review video as well, so you can always check that out. So I pegged to the back corner there. I want to basically go directly against it, giving myself a perfect straight line. With the pegging points, make sure they're on the furthest point out, just give you a maximum amount of tension without having to re-peg it. When you insert the peg into the ground, do it at a 45-degree angle. The reason I say this is mainly because when it comes to, basically the point's under tension, rather than it being kind of pulled directly out, having it on an angle, it's being pulled back on itself. So just gives a bit more, just a bit more resilience against the pegging point itself. Again, we'll pull that. I always give it like a little shimmy, just to try and get as much tension on it as possible. And again, we want to create a perfect kind of rectangle space for it. So we've done back two. We've now done the front two. Nearly done the front two. Again, just give it a little pull, get ourselves square. Really, because we've got the ground sheets stitched in here. So what I'm going to do actually is another two. So we're going to do the front two of where the front canopy is. So we can flip this over. Now again, we want to try and create that perfect line from the back of the tent straight down. Now with these, the front pegging points can be not always dead straight, depending on the model, but thankfully for this it is. So again, we'll do the same thing, 45-degree angle for the peg. Making sure the door is fully zipped up. And again, same thing. We're just going to put the adjustment out to its furthest point, pull back this way, pull back that way, just to get ourselves. We can re-peg this once it's kind of physically up, but normally if you do this right the first time, then you're pretty much good to go. At this point, what we'll do is now make sure that side door on that far side over there is fully open. The reason this is important is because we want air to get into it. And if essentially that door is shut, it's going to be like a vacuum fighting against itself. Now, what we've got is a Boston valve. So it's a kind of a very similar valve you get on most kind of airbeds. It has almost like a screw thread to it as well. So because it's got a plastic thread, I always recommend when you're threading the valve back into its sort of little seat, give it a little countersink first. That way, just make sure the thread's sitting down properly and you're not going to suddenly try and cross-thread it. It can be done. The manual pump that comes supplied with it, you can then just pop that in the main point and then start pumping up. Now, you can look to buy an electric pump to do this work for you yourself. Naturally, I do tend to find it is a little bit slower in terms of getting up, but you can obviously sit back, relax, let it do the hard work for you. The beams only run about sort of 7 psi is the recommendation, so it's not a kind of high pressure system. And as you can kind of see actually with each beam, and we're there. So it's not too much to beam. What I would always recommend doing as well, after you've done each beam, is just put the front cap onto it directly, just because it acts as a secondary seal. And what you sometimes find, you can occasionally get a bit of a slow puncher. Now, I have started on the middle 2 beams. There is kind of a reason for that. What we find is, if you start in the middle, obviously the either side of the door for starting points, so it means it's better to get the air directly into it. But secondly, what it also does as well, it just takes less strain off the fabric, because you're not going on the front or the back where it's probably been pinned down as much. So little things like that, just kind of over the lifetime of the product, can just give it a bit more help with general wear and tear. It's a bit far away from me, that. Again, with a manual pump, I always recommend going sort of fully up and fully down. Just use the pump to its maximum amounts. The pressure gauge that you find actually on the pump itself will only give you an indication when you do almost like a very slow downstroke. Just because of the way the valve is designed. So it's designed that it's a one-way valve. So when you've, so as the air is going in, it actually opens a little flap, which can then give the actual valve backwards pressure to understand how much pressure is in the valve. Naturally, what you find is with the pump is the more and more you obviously pump, you start by getting the volume in first, and as you get sort of build pressure up, the resistance on the pump gets more and more. So it's one of those things that maybe the first few beams you can almost do yourself and get someone else to get involved, but it obviously depends on your own general fitness. But on the whole, I don't find it sort of too strenuous. There's not an overly big diameter of the beam, so it doesn't mean it actually doesn't require as much air as you're thinking about. And because essentially it's 7 psi is the recommendation, it's quite a low pressure system. It's not the same as your kind of like car tyre or anything along that lines of that. So what I've done now is I've done the middle 3 beams. You can do the middle 2, doesn't really make a difference. We're just going to pop ourselves inside of it. So again, go through the side door and just help the beams up in place. So it's gone to full pressure. And I'm just going to kick. One thing you can find sometimes the bottom of the beam needs a little bit of a kick out, just so it's sitting in the right place. It's not kind of too kind of scrunched up. Now we're looking there. Here we go. Lovely jubbly. So again, sitting quite nice on that front. We have got a little bit more play in it, so we can kind of pull that out. I might just quickly, as we're here, just repeg this point a little bit more, because I can see from the ground sheet it's not quite perfect. Just show you can see how much difference that makes into it. So again, by doing that as well, you can also monitor it and make sure you kind of everything is really nice and square. And we'll just do the back beam. Like I said, because it uses a Boston valve, there isn't really a limitation to what kind of manual or electric pump you can buy. Now we've done it in points where people actually, because they like the manual pump's obviously a bit quicker, because the main reason you do this is because it gets more, it can get the volume into it quicker, and then slowly build the pressure up. There are a range of sort of 2-stage pumps on the market. It also allows you to just kind of do one for volume and then build the pressure up. But I don't think it's too strenuous, like I said, with that as well. With the back beam, once you get sort of to the right pressure, normally it kind of sits in place. Just that, you might need to just give it a little bit of a hand up, but on the whole it tends to be pretty straightforward. I've got one final beam left to do. So again, little reverse thread on the valve, make sure it's sitting pricely. Now this one you tend to, because it normally has quite a steep angle on the front, you might need to kind of pull almost completely up into place. And again, with the pumping, you can always sort of mix up whatever helps and find really sort of strenuous to do it on. But key thing is making sure you kind of keep it straight back, let the arms do the pushing, or if you want to make legs do it as well, just whatever. It's really to stop anything on that kind of lower back. Normally you tend to find it's kind of the upstroke that does lower back, which sometimes it's almost like kind of nice to collapse into it really. Perfect. Cool. So we're now pumped up. Now it's just a case of pegging it out. Now we'll pop that beam at the front up. Now I personally always like to start with the storm straps front and back. This is where you can get an extra tension into the roof section and making sure it's sort of sitting again nice and square. So if you want to check out the review video we've done on the tent, we've done that sort of separately, so you can have a look at that as well. But it's just the way how nicely it sits. The thing is that what I like about it, once you get a sort of tent square, and with those two sort of points, you can see that the roof section is tight as a drum. And it's going to happily bead water off as it needs to. Cool. Right, so at this point now we've done the front and back, we can then kind of go around and do the sides. The joy of actually the design of the tent itself is that by doing the pegging point on the base, it also does the one on the side as well. So you can get extra tension in, make it looking sharp. Again, the idea with the side guidelines is you're not over tensioning it, so you don't want to be kind of pulling it out of shape. It's merely there to kind of stop the beam from shifting any further forward in. You've got a tension point which you can just give it a little bit of tension, but you want it kind of just touch tight, nothing too extreme on that front. Now we can get the peg through the loop. There you go. And again, because you've got webbing straps, it makes life a lot easier when you come to pegging. A bit more robust. Take a bit more rain and strain. There's a little retainer for the strap just to kind of keep it sitting tight to there. You've got a triangle point on the front of each of the tent. Now ideally you want to kind of follow the seam directly out, so it's almost in line with that seam. So that way you can make sure that triangle point is dead center. With the pegging points on the front and the back, I would always probably do the inside skirt first. You want to kind of almost be pulling it back and into itself, so really you get that tension across the width. This extra bit of skirting for the front section is designed to go in, but because you're sort of bringing that section back into itself, you're taking the strain off the zip and kind of the front door in general. Now it depends if you want to open it from right to left, left to right, on which side you'd probably peg. But what we're going to do is going to done the front section, we're going to work our way back around the side now, and we'll of course finish off with the back points. You can, if you want to, just double peg it, so you can look to peg the bottom of the base as well. So whereas I'm just doing the strap for the time being, there is a pegging point on the bottom of the tent which you can double peg through. So on those windier days, you can just quickly notch that through to make life a bit easier. And again, just a bit more balance and braces more than anything. I think it just gives it a nice little point. It's worth mentioning that while on this side of what I did beforehand of pegging out fully is also zip that door up. So the side door, which we kind of made sure was open earlier on, we zipped up before we started pegging. The reason it's important is making sure you don't oversplay the tent, so it doesn't overstretch the door, meaning then suddenly when you come to want to shut the door, you can't honestly do that because obviously, like I said, the material is just too far away. Last 2 points at the very back of the tent. So we've got the pegging points at the base, and then the last bit on the corners. Again, each, same as we were doing with the main pegging points, we want to insert the peg at a 45-degree angle, just so when it sort of pulls up, it's got a bit more to it. But on the whole, simple as that. We can also adjust the straps at the bottom if you want to get a bit more tension into it. But it's sitting really nice, tight, like a drum. Looks great, great positions, and we're pretty much ready for our camping trip. So that's kind of how you're going to pitch your County 6. What we'll now do is we'll move on to packing it away and have a look at that. So now we move to packing down the County 6, and we're going to kind of do almost the same thing in reverse. So what I want to start by doing is basically removing all of the basically pegs apart from those sort of main 6 corners, i.e. the front two with the ground sheet sewn in, the other front 2, and the back 2. So if you have got a wind coming from a certain direction, I would kind of recommend maybe keeping a few guy lines in place, just really for the winds coming, just to give it a bit more sort of belts and braces kind of support on that front of things. Just makes life a little bit easier. Now, what I also want to do now is I want to open up this side door as well, just make sure we've got plenty of air to escape. With doors in general, I'd always recommend doing, if you can, if it's kind of like a rounded door, is I want to open it up so you've got essentially 2/3 open. So it's only probably about 1/3 of the zip engaged. Now, the reason we're doing this is purely for the fact that it's basically not meaning the fabric is all in one big lump and all the air can happily escape from there. So it's just little things like that can just make life an awful lot simpler. Or what I've done for the middle door in particular is I've kind of left the mesh fully open and then not sort of attach the ground sheet along the base of it. Again, so the air can flow out and the air can come through the mesh. Now, what we'll now do is deflate the beams from the back towards the front. The reason we're going to do this is so as basically the air comes down, it pushes all the internal air forward out towards the front door, and because we've left that side door open as well, it obviously is going to naturally kind of floor out to that point there. So it is just about kind of airflow in general. One thing you can always look to do sometimes as well, if you wanted to, is if you partially open the very front door here, it will just help to let some of that internal air, once this beam goes down, again, because there's no ground sheet sewn into it, just kind of come out that front door. So again, you can see how when the air comes flats in, so what we'll now do at this point here is we can almost take the pegs out. I'll always make a point again of actually with this is to undo the sort of webbing straps. So wherever you've got a webbing strap, just kind of release the tension off it a bit, where we might have just tapered it in a little bit. It's just really so when we come to pitch the tent the next time around, we haven't got to worry about, you know, undoing them. So it's almost prepped ready for next time. I'm now just going to flip the canopy over the top, so that way we're only really stealing and folding in when the ground sheet is physically sewn in. So again, I'll flip that over the top. Now, because all the valves are located on this side over here, what we're going to do is basically fold the tent from one side over to the other, basically pushing all of those internal air out the tubes. So by undoing the peg and points at the back and the front, we'll basically go to about a bag size width across the width here. So basically fold across. This is where, honestly, a second pair of hands can make your life a lot simpler, a lot easier, but it can be done by one person. If you're unsure on the overall width, I'll always go a little bit smaller. By all means, use the pump as a bit of a pegging guide as well. And then we'll just basically work our way across the actual tent. And what we're doing with this is basically pushing in the internal air out towards the front door. But also by pressing it down, it's also helping pushing the air out the tubes, out to that one side. Perfect. This is where you can sometimes get your kids involved, if need be, get them sort of doing rolls on there. I personally also like to run my hands along where the tube's located, just helping get any of that internal air out the tubes itself. Normally, sometimes if you don't do that, you can feel a little bit of a bulge on the tubes itself. That's what we're all about doing, is kind of managing the sort of internal airflow. I've left this side pegged in as well. Main reason because it gives me something to pull against when I'm sort of feeding it over. And again, if we've also got a wind coming from a certain direction, we can almost use this to our advantage to allow it to kind of, you know, stop it kind of almost re-inflating. Now, just usually by sort of folding, using this method, you should be able to get the awning back in its bag. The one bag, I will put a bit of disclaimer at the moment, the bag we're using at the moment is a pre-production sample. So it's not the official bag you get with it. We have made it a bit bigger on our recommendation, just to make sure we can, you know, if you're not always the best, but you're always better off having a bigger bag than you think, just because obviously it helps get it back in loose entirely. Nothing worse than struggling to get it back in the bag. There is a roller bag you can buy, and we do sell separately. So if you wanted something a bit big, a bit more industrial, with wheels on it, the compression straps, then you can always look at that as well. We'll just fetch the bag now. Now, what I'd always recommend doing as well is if you put the bag at the end of the tent, we can almost basically roll it directly into the tent itself. So when we're sort of rolling it in, we keep it neat and tidy, we're good to go. I would always recommend starting with a really tight roll. You want to get as tight as possible, because the better you start, the better you kind of end, really. Keep your weights directly over the top of the actual part and sort of roll hand. You're more sort of squeezing and rolling one hand onto the other. Again, second pair of hands makes life a little easier. I kind of always pull the fabric back into the corner as well, where we folded it, just to make sure we're not sort of bulging too much on one side. When we get to the last bit, is where you get the most air, because obviously you've got the fold of the fabric as well, where we kind of fold that front canopy back. And you're always squeezing the last bit of the air out the front section as well. Lovely jubbly. Back in the bag. So even though they're making the bag bigger, it goes back in like a treat. We can also put the compression straps on as well, just to kind of give it a bit more, compact it a little bit more, but also gives us a little bit more of a handle point to kind of pick it up if need be. But that's it. Good to go. Back ready for our next sort of trip. That's kind of how you're going to pack away the County 6. For more information on the video, on the tent I should say, feel free to comment in the box below. Follow the link below this video, takes you through to our website. We've got more things like pack sizes, floor dimensions, individual features, bundle deals, and all sorts of stuff, as well as the review video we've done on the County as well. But hopefully it's been helpful. I look forward to seeing you again in our next Attwoolls Outdoors videos, tutorial videos, whatever